Hello, this is Ms. Silver Plata, and I am happy to see you one more time here in 6th grade math. We will continue with our lesson for Module 2. This time we are going to continue with Lesson 6. Okay, in Lesson 6, we are going to write more division stories. Now remember, we started writing division stories in Lesson 5. You might think, why do we need to do it again? Well, we believe that if you can write your own story problems in division, that only goes to show how much you understand the concept. You can divide fractions, you can divide it by fractions and by mixed numbers, or multiply fractions by whole numbers, and you can relate all these concepts in real life. That's why we want you to be able to write your own story problems in division of fractions. Okay, so we begin with the review of the steps that I gave you in Lesson 5 on how to write story problems in division. Okay, so what is step 1? Step 1 is you will decide on an interpretation. Now remember the two ways of interpretation in a division problem. Okay, number 1, the partitive interpretation. This is where the divisor tells the number of groups and the quotient names the size of each group. Okay, and then the other one is the measurement division. Measurement division is when you use that fraction as the size of each part. Now for Lesson 6, this particular lesson, we are going to focus on partitive division. So that's step 1. Okay, so you don't have to worry about what interpretation we're going to use for this lesson, because we have already decided we're going to use the partitive division for this one. And then step 2, you draw a model. In the past, we learned that the appropriate models for division of fraction is a tape diagram and a number line. So you can choose between those two. Step 3, you work out the problem and find the answer. Okay, so you write your expression, okay, you draw a model, you solve that expression. Okay, and then step 4, you choose a unit. There are a lot of units out there that you can use. You can use yards, ounces, miles, meters, inches, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then finally, set up a situation. Now, when you set up a situation in writing division problems, story problems, it has to be realistic, it has to make sense, and it has to be short and clear. All right? So let's begin with this. 50 divided by 2/3. Okay. Now, with this example, we already said we are going to use partitive division. So we got that step 1 out of the way because we already know what to use. Okay. In step 2, we are going to draw a model. So, what do we know? 50 divided by 2/3. So, I'm going to start with 2/3. Shade 2 parts. After 3, there is your 2/3. And according to the problem, this 2/3 is 50. So, what is the unknown? The unknown is, what is that whole thing? What is the number? Okay, that represents 2/3 is 50 of what number? Okay, no, let me say that again. 50 is 2/3 of what number? That's what we are trying to look for. Okay, so step 3, you find the answer. Okay, now how do we do this? According to the model, we see it very clearly. There are 2 units there that represents 50. So I want to know what 1 unit represents. 1 unit, therefore, is 50 divided by 2, which is, you are correct, 25. So in that case, I can go back to my model because I already know that this part is 25, this part is 25, and this part is 25. And also, I know that since I'm looking for the whole thing, there are 3 units there of 25. So what does that mean? 25 times 3 is 75. Now I have the answer. What I'm looking for is 75. Okay? So what does that mean? If 50 is 2/3 of what number, what is that number? That number is 75. Okay? So we had step 1, step 2, step 3. Let's go to step 4. Choose a unit. Okay? So in this case, I am thinking let's use money. Okay? So what unit? We're going to use dollar as our unit. I chose this because when I'm looking at the size of the whole thing, with money, we can use a situation where we want to know the beginning and the after amount of money. Okay, so that is what we are going to use for that situation, 50 divided by 2/3. So I came up with something here, and let's determine whether it is reasonable, it is short and clear, it matches the expression, and it's realistic. So here it goes. Adam spent $50 on a new graphing calculator. This was 2/3 of his money. How much money did he start with? Did it match our expression? What was the expression? 50 divided by 2/3. Did it match? Yes. Okay. Remember our model? 2/3 represents $50. Okay. He spent it by buying a new graphing calculator. And then it's asking you how much money did he start with? This is the amount of money he has. And when we answered it in the previous slide, we said 75. Right? So we say that Adam has $75. Okay? All right. So let's continue. I want you, right, to use the same dividend and divisor. I'm talking about 50 divided by 2/3. And then write your own story problem. You may use the same unit, dollars, like what I used, or you can use a different one like ounces, yards, or miles. It's up to you. Just make sure that it makes sense, it is short and clear, and it is realistic. Okay? So here's an example, another example that matches the expression 50 divided by 2/3. So here's another story problem. Ronaldo has ridden 50 miles during his bicycle race and is 2/3 of the way to the finish line. How long is the race? So that 2/3 is not the entire race. That 2/3 represents 50 miles. So he still has some way to go. The question is, how long is the race? So the race is, you are correct, 75 miles. All right. Now, let's take a look at this. This time we have 1/2 divided by 3/4. Okay, and we're going to follow the steps so that we don't get lost somewhere. So let me go find my notes for 1/2 divided by 3/4. Yes, this is example 2. Okay. Now, we are going to divide 1/2 divided by 3/4. Step 1, we're going to use partitive division. Okay. We already got that straightened up even in the beginning of this lesson. That's what we're going to use for the entire lesson, partitive division. Okay. So what do we want to know here? 3/4 is the number of groups. So I'm asking 1/2 is 3/4 of what number? Let me write that down. Okay. 1/2 is, okay, let me write it over here. 1/2 is 3/4 of what number? 1/2 is 3/4 of what number? So that's what we are looking for. Okay, so step 2, we are going to use a model. All right, so let's begin with the 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now what did it say? That 3/4 represents 1/2 of what number? All right, did you follow that one? From the expression to the model, I started with my 3/4 because what I want to know is 1/2 is 3/4 of what number? So I want to know the whole thing. Yes, so this 3/4 is 1/2 of what number? Okay, so that's step 2. Step 3, yes, we are going to find the answer. All right, so let's see. 3 units, what does that represent? You are correct, 1/2. Okay, I want to know what each unit represents. Okay, because this 3 parts here is 1/2. So I want to know how much is each part. So 1/2 divided by 3. Now, do you remember in lesson 4 how we related division of fraction to multiplication? What did we say? You're right, they are the same. So 1/2, let me write the whole thing again here, divided by 3 is the same as 1/3 times 1/2. All right, so what do we have? 1 times 1, 1, 3 times 2, 6. 1/6. So what does this mean? This is 1/6, this is 1/6, this parts is 1/6 each. Okay, now what is the question? The question is 1/2 is 3/4 of what number? So the whole thing. All right, so the whole thing is 4 units. Okay, so 4 units is 1/6 each unit times 4 gives me, you're right, 4/6. So simplest form would be 2/3. Okay, so the answer here is 2/3. So if we go back here, 1/2 is 3/4 of 2/3. Okay, so we did step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. Choose a unit. Now there are suggestions here. It says you can use time in hours, you can use distance, and you can even use eggs in dozens. Okay, why? Because since both halves and 6 are identifiable parts of hour, a foot, and a dozen, then it is most appropriate to use. Okay, and then of course step 5, you set up a situation. So I'm going to show you an example of a story problem for 1/2 divided by 3/4, and tell me what you think. Here we go. After traveling for a half hour Scott completed 3/4 of his commute. How long is the commute? Okay, so 3/4 is not the entire commute. Okay, that 3/4 was spent half an hour. Okay, so if 3/4 of the commute is half an hour, the question is how long is the commute? So did it make sense? 4/6 is the answer? Yes. Right. Okay, so what I want you to do for exercise 2, we are going to use the same thing. 1/2 divided by 3/4. Okay. And I would like you to write your own story problem. Okay. You can use the same unit that we use. What did we use? Unit. Time, half an hour. Okay. So what else can you use? You can use distance in feet. Okay, because in feet it's in 12 inches in a foot. You can also use eggs in dozens because it has dozens, etc. So here's another example for that expression. And let's see if it matches the expression. Daryl completed 3/4 of his homework in a half hour. How long does it take Daryl to complete all of his homework? Okay, so you have all this homework. Daryl has all this homework. He spent half an hour on 3/4 of the homework. The question is, how long does it take Daryl to complete all of them? Okay, so that means, what was the answer? 2/3 of an hour? Yes. All right. So, to end this, let's take a look at these questions. How did we extend our work with division with fractions in this lesson? Okay. We took the answer to a partitive division problem. We chose a unit and then thought of a story problem that would fit it. Okay. What were your biggest challenges when writing story problems involving division with fraction? I would say the second example that we did when we are dividing both fractions as the dividend and the divisor. I think we struggle a little in that part. Okay, so if you have the packet, and I'm sure you do, there's an exit ticket there. Okay, I want you to find it and answer that along with the problem set. Okay, so that you have more to practice on division of fractions. So that's the end of lesson 6. Don't forget to stay safe, wash your hand, don't touch your face, and I'll see you next time. Again, this is Miss Silver. Bye.